Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Left of Greg podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Brian Marin, and it's just going to be Greg and myself today. Of course, Greg Williams, who the podcast is affectionately named after. Today, we are going to be discussing more HBPRA, more human behavior pattern recognition and analysis topics, specifically focused on what we have written up here of tactical patience, all right, how to create that time and distance. So that's kind of be the focus of it. But before we get into that, of course, always, if you guys want more information, always www.arcadiacognerati.com. Follow us on the Left of Greg YouTube channel. These are on there as the Left of Greg podcast on iTunes. You can go to the website. You can go to our Buzzsprout, all that stuff. All the links to everything is on the website, but we're also obviously on Facebook, Instagram. We write the Medium stories that Greg works on for the lessons learned are all posted there. So get on there and clap for our stories. So maybe they'll give us $1 or something, and we get something better than just this whiteboard and a couple.
That'll be your first paycheck, Marin.
So on that, and I know Greg, you wanted to give a shout out to some of the folks.
Yeah,
training last week. Go ahead and fill everyone in.
Marin, for all our listeners, all our viewers, we hosted training last week up in Sterling, Colorado. Sterling's on the east side of Colorado, up by the Nebraska, Kansas borders, Wyoming to the north. It's incredibly beautiful. Matter of fact, the first time,
amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. First time I ever bunny and bird hunted with my old man in Colorado was in Sterling, Colorado.
Really?
We went on a pheasant hunt back in the day. We were going to Pendleton of all places, his old alma mater.
Yeah.
And so on the way through, we met some friends out there, and I just want to say the training was incredible. We have never been so graciously hosted as we were. The university, the college up there, Brian, is Northeastern. Director of security up there was Trenton Swartzer. He was the one that offered the venue. The Sterling Fire Chief Ritter set everything up for us and got everybody there. Commanders Kelsch and Swingle from the police department there, and from Colorado State Patrol, we had Sergeant Mark Bornhoft. I know I'm butchering his name, but Mark with a C. What a great guy. All the Logan County SO people, the people from the emergency room, the people from the fire departments, the people from the PDs and the SOs. We had crisis intervention personnel.
Yeah, so you had school folks there, right?
Everybody. This is exactly when it goes right. One, couldn't have done it without Gilbert Tucker, former fire department here in Gunnison, now fire up in Sterling. His wife, Callie, is actually a crisis intervention as a psychologist. It just went swimmingly. And guess what? All the right people showed up. All the right people walked away with some training, Brian. And thank you for saying that. I love that type of training, that in-person regional. And these folks, I gave them everything I had, and they were wonderful.
Well, and plus, anytime you get a mix of those groups, we often get in those training mindsets where it's, okay, hey, let's put on my active shooter ball cap and train for that. Hey, let's get on my suicide prevention cap and train for that, where you don't need to have all that, right, if you understand the understanding human behavior pattern recognition analysis. So when you have those groups together, where it's like a community-wide group, I mean,
exactly.
It increases that effectiveness of everyone on their job. They all have speak that same lexicon, and it's better for that whole region, that whole area. Everyone who gets that training, it's great. I love those classes because you have different perspectives, right? And that's where you create more file folders and more experiences. So now that police officer or fireman walks away with something they didn't know that they learned from the school psychologist, and now that school psychologist learned something they didn't know from the fire department and police perspective that were there. It just creates that. I mean, it's amazing when you're there.
Now, you're absolutely right. And that everybody, like, for example, no doubt that Logan County Communications, there was some personnel that didn't know somebody on the fire department. And one of the tactical unit commanders might never have met anybody from Colorado State Patrol. So that there's networking that goes on in every one of those little breaks, and there's just such a great amount of discussion in the margins. So when learning occurs, it's a wonderful tool. Wonderful thing.
Those spirals from each different area is what makes that it makes it unique to your area in specific. I always love those because the takeaways are that much better than us just showing up and saying, hey, here's a system and here's how you use it, now go do great things. When you have as much of that community involvement, it just makes it so much better. So
Absolutely.
appreciate all those people that showed up. Thanks to them. And hopefully they're tuning in. I know some of them signed up at the website, and I'm probably going to be watching or listening to this. So thank you guys for coming out and supporting and everything. So today's topic, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about tactical patience. So I have it written up here on the board for those of you watching it. So for those of you listening, we got the little board behind us. We can write up notes on. As you can see, I have the writing of about like a fourth grader, but I read at like a 7th or 8th grade level. So I'm doing okay, I think. I'm starting to think that like one of my legs is slightly shorter than the other because I always write on an angle, probably TBI related, but well, that's a whole separate podcast.
I would venture more on the alcohol related side, but I don't want to speculate because I can't smell you right now.
Yeah, that's true. We'll keep that hand shaking a little bit right here as I'm trying to write stuff down. So no, today we'll get into tactical patience. So I think that's a term that is actually a little bit more common lexicon nowadays, somewhat than the first time I heard it 10, 15 years ago, kind of in the military, because that has a specific kind of definition. So I've got some notes too, but Greg, why don't you go ahead and give us your definition of tactical patience?
Yeah. And we can talk historical perspective and who started what and why Van Helsing is a melon head. But the idea is, let's go right to the source. First and foremost, using the gift of time and distance to control when, capital W, when things happen. You have the ability to manipulate the op tempo, and you consciously manipulate the operational tempo. So you have the technical and tactical advantage. So what that means is that you control the speed and momentum of contact and whether you do contact or not. Those are things that now you control. By utilizing that, Brian, you can be predictably unpredictable. Therefore, your opponent, your enemy, your adversary, depending on what audience we're talking to on that day, they have to adjust to your pace, your time schedule when you do things. And that keeps them off balance. And it's not unlike a prize fight or martial arts, and it applies to everything, not just military. So if I was talking to kids on a playground, I'd say, look before you leap. If I was talking to EMS, I'd say, hey, listen, there's very few times when your personnel have to rush into anything. Don't be the first guy at your homicide. So tactically, it doesn't always make sense to be in a hurry. And it doesn't mean to move slowly, Brian, just to make sure. It means using time as a weapon. It means that we're using time as an insurgent denial tool, a criminal denial tool. We don't let them have the benefit of the upper hand in any contact.
Right. And just to kind of build right on what you're saying, the word tactical is in there, but not in the sense of a military law enforcement tactical, meaning because this works in the boardroom. This works in you're interviewing someone. This works as you're in a negotiation that you go, you know what, maybe I don't want to jump on this right now. Maybe I can slow down this battle rhythm going back and forth to regain the momentum in the situation. So I'm not reacting to my opponent. And the opponent doesn't, we use that, but it could be talking to your kids, right? It doesn't have to actually be, don't think of it as opponent, someone trying to do you harm, but the person across the table from you, it might be, hey, you know what, I might let this one slide a little bit because I'm going to come up, I'm going to gain a little bit more advantage by slowing down this pace of this negotiation that I'm in, right? Or this conversation I'm having.
We both utilize English as a second language, but both of us did go to school. I'm a product of the Detroit school system. You're a product of the Chicago school system. So we are not the Rhodes scholars in the room. But I will tell you this: if we take a look back at journalism or interview techniques, or if there's anybody from HR that's listening to us, remember the term pregnant pause. Right. And while you're talking to somebody, if you just wait for a few seconds, they'll fill that void because people want their say. They very rarely want their way, but they always want their say. So even if we were talking about even if we were talking about a simple interview technique, and you said your kids, looking at your kid and go, Tommy, and then doing the pregnant pause, that's a form of tactical patience. So I would actually separate it, and we don't. Because what we don't want to do is have the murder board and have the Marines sitting there yelling at us about what atmospheric means. But you could have a functional definition that included technical patience as well.
Right.
It's all under that same umbrella, Brian.
Right, and then that's a perfect word, I think, for more the kind of civilian side, technical patients versus
Yes.
tactical. So that's the technical level that you're talking about. Right here, if we're dealing with someone, another human being, or a situation, I'm on that tactical or technical
Yep.
level, right? This isn't in a planning process. I mean, you to put it into your planning process, but we're just talking about it topically right now. And one other, thing I do kind of add on to the definition of, which actually I think it was Alan Spiker who said it during one of the objective evaluation of combat profiling, when when you were training with the Marine Corps, we were training with the Marine Corps, and the idea was also using tactical patience to avoid committing too soon or going to kinetics unnecessarily.
Okay, so
Right?
just so you know,
You
shout
wrote,
out to
yeah,
VA Spiker. I just jotted that down as you were talking, and it's amazing because when you think about that, we're on the same sheet of music there. So psychologically, clinically, avoiding committing too soon, meaning making a psychological commitment or a cognitive commitment that this is in fact my suspect or that crime is afoot, but also failing or choosing not to commit your resources. We don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of budget. We don't have a lot of
right.
personnel. And so if we do that and it's a feint or it's some sort of a trap or an ambush, then we'll have all of our resources committed and we won't be on solid footing. So it's brilliant that you brought that up. Shout out to VA Spiker. We love you.
Yeah. And so one of the other things that I know you've kind of commented on it or written about it, and this is tactical patience would be, all right, so we're going to slow down. We're going to take that pregnant pause, like you defined it as. I don't know if you can say that in 2019 anymore. That might be offensive to someone. Who knows?
Exactly. Well,
But
it beats up our original term was knocked up pause.
yeah,
So this is much better. It shows that both
we're,
of us have
we're progressing
we're
as
learning.
a
We're
whole. We
learning.
are. We're learning. The knuckles are slowly coming off the ground. I'm not dragging them as much anymore.
But
But
they are still hairy.
yeah. So one of them was it's kind of a largely attitudinal, right? This
Yes.
is an approach, a mindset almost, right? So there's a lot of talk about like fixed and growth mindset and how people accomplish certain things, and this is kind of what we gets into, and for especially for anyone with this type of background. But it's what do you mean by if you'd say, hey, this is largely attitudinal, all right? I have to adopt this in the way I look at everything.
Yes.
Okay.
So let me give you an example. Let me give you two. Let me give you two brief ones. And again, I always assign homework. There's two great vids that are out there, and they're horrific. One is a female getting pulled over for equipment violation on a pickup truck. I'm sure everybody has seen it. If not, later we'll
I'll
add
put the link.
links.
I'll put the
Yeah,
link
thanks,
up.
Brian.
Yeah.
And then one is Butch Bander sent us a while back, and Sean virtually at the same time, where the guy is hanging on and surfing next to the police officer, surfing next to the car because the driver decides to drive away from the traffic
Yeah.
stop. Now, let's talk about both of those. First of all, the Ajax and GoPro cameras aren't designed to film officers behaving badly and watch you die. So stop, think about what you're about to do. Specifically to the officer that was involved in the tasing, multiple tasing of the older female. Training changes behaviors, old boy. One, you knew who the female was, so you could get a warrant. That's why you apply for an arrest warrant, and you could take her anytime, day or night. You didn't have to execute it at that time in that place. And you're going to say, well, she had done it for 6 or 8 months. Well, then clearly it wasn't important to do it at that moment. What she did, she was guilty of contempt of cop. She pissed you off, which is evidence that after your pursuit, you left your siren on, you went immediately to escalate the violence. When you drew your weapon system, you turned the traffic stop into a felony. But you know what? I'm not going to judge you from here in the cheap seats because I wasn't at that time and at that place. But you will be judged. And when you're judged, they'll look at it and they'll say there was a complete lack of training, and you give every officer a bad name by performing in that manner. You may have saved a choking baby the day before, and you may have given
Right.
CPR and saved a life that night. So I'm not bashing you, but I'm saying you failed to exercise tactical patience on that traffic stop. Many other things could have happened. You could have decided to tow the vehicle with her in it. You could have followed your department policy and procedures. You could have blocked the vehicle front and back using road spikes so she couldn't drive if she was going to be unsafe, and then let her linger at the scene till she got tired, and then offer water and have her follow you back to the hut with Hansel and Gretel, and then throw her in the hoosegow. But what you chose to do is you chose that at this moment, I'm going to draw the line. And what happened is it looked bad for everybody. And it was, I believe that there was a demonstration of negligence in training and supervision at that scene. The second one, copper went up, clearly had the violation. He had the right license plate on the vehicle. He knew who the offender was. He knew the name of the offender. So saying I'm going to hang on to this car is that superhuman catecholamine
Right.
jump where your limbic system says, no fear, I shall hold on to this car as it's going. And then trying to draw your weapon system or your taser while it's driving, all of that's going to end poorly. Listen, I had to call off pursuits, and I was the same guy initiating. When I was initiating pursuits, the boots of truth and justice, everybody going, damn, that guy gets into more pursuits, he's getting more felons. And you know what? Sometimes I choose poorly because I was younger. I didn't know, like the Bible says, I was thinking with the mind of a child back then, and I pushed pursuits a little too far. You know, thank God nobody got killed, didn't kill a nun, car full of babies, something like that on the way to gosh damn maternity room. That's how to deliver babies, apparently. But the idea is when I grew smarter and I saw the ways and I started learning the law and I started applying the department policy and procedures, I understood that sometimes you have to call off a pursuit for the benefit of the general public, for the benefit of the driver, for the officers, or you can get in a trick bag and somebody's going to get killed. Then they're going to say that you chose to pursue arbitrarily and capriciously. Arbitrary and with caprice is bad. Bad. That's a Title 42, Section 1983 caper, and you're going to lose money, and you may go to jail. You're certainly going to lose a job, and the system is going to pay the plaintiff. So why not avoid that by giving yourself that gift of time at distance and going through that 3/4 of a second sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system and going, what are the likely spirals from what I'm about to do, say, enact, put into motion. And if the balance isn't there, and we're talking legal,
Right.
moral, and ethical, LME, if it's not there, maybe we need to disengage, break contact, take cover, de-escalate the situation, call for a cover. There, Brian, myriad choices. Okay. And somebody's going to say, oh, you weren't there. You don't know. Yeah. The old lady really had you up against the boards, pal. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Well, that's it. It's you brought up one good point that we absolutely should hit on is kind of why we have a hard time, actually doing this. Why does that happen where the police officer latches on to the moving vehicle, just like you said, of a known offender that they already got his plates, they already have it on video, and why that stuff type to happen. And I've got plenty of examples of that, especially as a young Marine. I mean, we we were out all night, came up to this checkpoint in the middle of Ramadi, Al-Anbar province of Iraq to not check. Well, it was a checkpoint 295, but it was a large intersection. And normally that time of day, it's 7:30 in the morning. There's vehicles on the road. There's people going by, and it's just dead silence. There's no one out there. And so we have to bound across to go link up with this other team. And we're looking, going like, gee, this looks really odd. I've never seen this before. Well, let's do it. So 2 at a time, me and my buddy, we go running across that street, and guess what happens? I mean, it's just 4th of July at us. I mean, medium machine gun fire, AK fire, just boom, 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 hitting all over our feet. And we went, like, well, we got across and went, that was about the dumbest thing we've ever done. So there was a complete lack of tactical patience. So why is it that we get in that? What, I mean, what, like you said, okay, you're the old sage graybeard that can say, well, son, you should have known this and picked up on the pre-event indicator. So even though I saw that coming, why do I still hit that gas pedal?
So let's talk about external influences for just a second, and I'll tell you a funny cop story. Tragic, funny, not funny, haha. So some coppers were going to go up north after their midnight shift, and the coppers wanted to celebrate with some cocktails at the location once they got there. So they were all tired when they were driving. External factors. Those factors are making us make worse decisions. We're not thinking critically. We're not planning, right? So as they're driving up, it's starting to get dark. So they've driven all day from day shift to afternoon shift.
Yeah.
Now they're coming back up on midnight again. The trailer loses a tire, goes into oncoming traffic, and center punches a car on a major freeway. So now they have to deal with that situation. Trailers off to the road. They can't do anything with it. They take enough camping gear and walk into the woods, and lo and behold, find what appears to be a nice little campground. They're going to handle this in the morning. So now their critical thinking is really out the window. So they didn't exercise the tactical patience to have a plan, pace plan, primary, alternate, contingent, emergent. So they set up a campfire, a makeshift blaze, an inferno, and they sit drinking and singing all night long. And then when they wake up in the morning, they figure out that they're on the playground of a roadside mobile home park, and all the patrons of the mobile home park are petrified because here these goons have turned their backyard into a campground. They had no idea. Well, you can imagine what that does for the local flora and fauna, and how well we look on that. What happens is our judgment is clouded. If we go clinically and scientifically, we get what's called confirmation bias. Right. We think that what we're seeing and feeling and smelling and tasting at the moment is the only thing in the world, and every other conclusion is irrational or ill-founded. So therefore, our brain reinforces it with chemicals saying axon dendrite, attach. And we think that we are actually in the right in every one of those situations. So when we do that, we're actually offended when somebody does or says. I'll give you another perfect video that they can look up, Brian. Do you remember the gentleman that gets out of the car and it looks like I'm bashing cops, and I'm not. But if you're going to be a cop or a first responder or LE or any of that other stuff, be the best you can be. And if you blow, say, hey, I blew it, and walk up and fix it with money or training. So the copper makes the traffic stop on that little pup pickup truck, and the driver gets out and reaches for the cane because he's in his 70s and can't stand up, and they shoot him up. The copper on the traffic stop shoots.
Longtail Street. Most fellas gonna be the apartment. I mean, trailer park. Hey, sir. 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 Oh.
Hey! Why? Because it's nighttime, and at nighttime, all our demons show up. And now we're on a stretch of road, and the last instructor I had said, he said, hey, you're going to, run into the bad guys at night. And this is all playing on me. So my catecholamines are kicking, and all of a sudden I've got my limbic system that's firing. My prefrontal cortex is now retarded. It's slower than the rest of my brain because I'm starting to process the information. And I say, this guy's leaving.
Everything.
You got it. This guy's leaving, and I'm going to stop him from leaving. That's not a cane, it's a gun. So tactical patience means that if I'm not in full control of my cognition, if I'm not fully in control of my advanced critical thinking, I may be a danger to others or myself or my family. Not to bag on Heimlich maneuver again, but for the love of God, you get a little bit excited, you eat too much damn food. Tactical patience, now you're in a trick bag and your windpipe is obstructed, and somebody's got to give you a chest compression or a slap on the back. Same thing. We think that everything is so important that we're going to speed to get there quicker, and now we're texting while we're speeding.
Right.
And Timmy came out of nowhere. All of those have undesirable outcomes, and the undesirable outcome can be linked exactly back to tactical patience.
No, and that's great for everyday life. It's going to pick someone up at the airport or driving to the airport or getting there for yes, it sucks sitting in an airport waiting for your plane. It's boring, but bring a book, listen to a podcast, listen to this podcast while you're sitting there, but get there early enough. Because I used to do the same thing, right? We get in those patterns where I've flown out of the San Diego airport 9,000 times.
Yep.
So I knew that what time I had to leave my house to get there, whether I was checking a bag or not checking a bag to get in. So I spent no extra time there. Yeah, until I almost missed a very, very important flight that I would have been.
A very important test.
Yeah.
A real important blood test.
It's just got to be patient. And so
no. So listen, Marion, do you remember the time that we were at, I think it was DIA, but it might have been Atlanta. Time and space are blending together with so much travel. But you and I were there, and there was either a lightning strike or an electrical outage or some absolutely insurmountable national disaster that occurred, and the flight was going to be delayed. And the guy walked up, the business class guy walked up and is given a ration of crap to the booking agent, the flight attendant. Where am I supposed? What am I now? It was as if she snuck out.
She caused it
and unplugged all the shit, and then said, okay. We don't think like that, but we must. Do a tactical patient study, limited objective experiment. Next time you're at Safeway or City Market, when the person in front of you to the checkout line moves ahead, stand your ground.
Mm-hmm.
Let them move up a little bit. They're putting up the cantaloupes. The guys win them. Stand your ground. Don't move up a step. What do you think the people behind you are doing?
Oh yeah, they're all like
absolutely bat crap crazy because listen, time doesn't matter. There's only one number of time. You can't save time. You can be much more efficient with your time.
Right.
But you can't save it. So the idea is that use that gift of time and distance to save a life. Pay it forward, pay it backwards, pay it sideways. But by slowing down, and we're not talking about moving more slowly. For example, do you think that you think better in a gunfight when you're toe-to-toe with an opponent or when you're safely behind cover and you're doing a tactical reload?
Exactly.
You get what I'm trying to say? So your life may be hanging in the balance here, or you're going to have 12 jurors, and they're going to break down that life very slowly, and they're going to say, but didn't you have time? Well, I didn't think well, you didn't think. Well, we know that you didn't think. Harrison Ford, what was that movie where they said, you did not think, sir? Where he's in the British court system and they're yelling at him where the terrorist attack.
That was, clear, whatever. One of the Tom Clancy stories.
They're all the same story.
They're all the same story. I don't know.
This one, they happen to start in Ireland or England or Scotland.
Yeah.
Wonderful countries that we love so much.
Yeah,
but you get what I'm saying, Brian. I mean, a kid walking to school, we have to teach him tactical patience. Pursuing a suspect on foot, tactical patience. Hey, do you want to be first around that corner, or do you want to go safely around that corner?
Right.
Don't run where you can't put your light. Don't put a soldier where you can't put a bot or a missile. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Exactly. It's not outrunning your headlights, and
exactly.
As we say on the tactical side, don't go running in your own death. I mean, that happens all the time where it's horrible where, average people on the street, law enforcement, first responders, military, it happens to everyone. It happens to highly trained people, is that they become a contributing factor to their own death.
And
so
they don't do it knowingly, Brian.
No, not at all. I want
the cops to talk on the broadcast right now. The police officers, when I'm talking about a fellow copper, I've made a ton of mistakes myself.
Right.
I don't think that copper with that female was being malicious. I don't think the cop hanging onto that car was a coward or stupid. I'm saying that they did their jobs very well. But what I'm saying is, because of their lack of training and the lack of tactical patience, as you have written up, they compounded a situation and they created a dangerous outcome. And that's not acceptable. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standards. Teachers and lawyers and doctors and police officers, certainly, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And understanding that your body is going to violate the principles of tactical patience is the first step. You have to understand that normal human reaction time to an incident is 3/4 of a second. During that time frame, your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system's already cogitated through the problem, and it's thought about all these angles. It's followed a couple spirals. In that nanosecond, it's already decided what it wants to do. But you're the vehicle. You're the final person before that goes. And so if you build into every exercise tactical patience, that's that program running at the back, and you say, okay, I am not going to commit until the situation is advantageous for me, then you're going to save a lot of lives and money.
And that's actually perfect, just how to implement something like this. You hit it right there on the head when it comes to training. So much scenario-based training, I think, has gotten a lot better. Even some of the, you get on YouTube, there's some people doing some crazy stuff that people think is going to work, but whatever. But as a whole, right, that kind of tactical training stuff that guys like you and some other folks were developing in the 80s and 90s, like, is now starting to come to, it's kind of becoming more so the standard where people are getting better at it. And but that's the thing, is that what we still don't build into that, right? We're just like Sean, who's always on the podcast, always says, hey man, everyone wants to go to the range and shoot guns. Everyone wants to go to the gym and lift weights. No one wants to train the brain. And that's what it is. You can put this into, all right, stop right here, stop, tack freeze like we do during training. All right,
exactly.
What are your options right here at this point?
Yep.
What are your options right here at this point? And just like you said, it's that cost benefit analysis of what I'm going to do next. All right, if this decision, hey, most likely, most dangerous course of action, where is this going to lead to? ML, MD, COA this, all right? And then go, well, if this could potentially, increase or escalate the situation, do I want to take this path? Is it necessary with this person, right? Is it the guy that just shot up a bank and is running around shooting civilians on the street, or is it
I must act now?
Yeah, I must act now to save someone else's life, or is this hey, this is the old lady whose vehicle isn't properly registered, and it's probably shouldn't be on the road because it had some accident or whatever. What's the cost benefit here of actually pursuing this? And I think that's where we get in.
You say cost. I love the reason you say cost, because when you make mistakes, you're going to pay.
Yep.
If you're on the side of right and you make an honest, knowing mistake, again, I don't think any of those cops were being malicious.
No.
You'll survive, you'll do fine, and you'll move forward. But if they can show that you were arbitrary and capricious, or you retained a subject that wasn't thinking critically, your agency's going to pay. And you may be paying for a funeral, and that would be the ultimate insult. You have to frame it. The human brain is going to respond predictably to certain external schema. When there are confounds in the environment, humans react in a very specific way. So knowing that going into it, your hands-on training, your actual part task training and practical application should include those. Now, you, Brian, remember back in the day, we've been together long enough. I was doing that gig for EA Sports on what was at that time called Operation Anaconda. I don't remember what it is now.
I think that's Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
Games,
and so what I try to encourage them to do, parallel at the exact same time with the beginning of the IAT, is to show the outcome. So, for example, we were working on technology that didn't exist yet. So when you brought up the binos in real time, on the binos, you actually saw a guy out 1,000 meters. In the Village, you remember, Brian, when the avatar would run and get on a motorcycle, all of a sudden a motorcycle would drive up in front of you, and there'd be a real human actor. So we were playing with all that stuff, and the idea was, let's take it the next step and have CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, whichever one that you watch, pop up so we could see the after effects of that strategic corporal. So now all of a sudden, corporal, you decided to do this, this, and this, or officer or EMS, right? And then let's see how it went. And we go to the big screen, and all of a sudden on the big screen it said 7 people died today in a completely preventable accident or whatever, right? So if we have those discussions about drinking, and we start thinking about the gas tank being the prefrontal cortex and going back through the limbic system to the most primitive part of the brain, if we have too much to drink, we make poor decisions. If we have too little time, we make poor decisions. So the luxury of too much or too little time is we have to control it. We have to manipulate it, and we have to never act until it's advantageous for us. There are rare exceptions. Choking baby. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
That's
officer down right in front of me, and I have to break cover to, drag him into cover or something. But they're so rare as to be exceptional.
Right, and even within those situations, you can still make a better tactical decision without rushing right into it. So even within those chaotic situations, so we're now past the planning process of tactical patience of, hey, how should I implement this? What do I need to do? Can I take a second here? Right, now we're actually in that chaotic situation, Greg, and I think even then, it's taking that pause, and you don't want to be reacting to the bad guy. You want them reacting to you. Well, you talk about, guys will always talk about, oh, you're on the X, you walk into an ambush and you got to get off. And it's like, well, yes, if you missed everything, all right, which means you missed everything, because there's always prevent indicators, and now you're in there. Well, you can still be ahead of the left of that next bang, right? You can still, increase your chance of survival, increase your chance of success, just utilizing that tactical patience. And do
you remember the room? Do you remember the room that was designed non-attribution, that everybody goes in and nobody comes out? And, you and I were there with Teacher and Shelley, if you remember, and our interview was, what benefit is there this training? And they go, well, there's sometimes you can't do anything and everything's going to fail. If you plan and you rehearse and you strategize and you train and you take into account the most likely and most dangerous courses of action, you will likely choose, and the better choices you make, you will likely have an easier path going down. And then even if something goes wrong, you'll have mitigation strategies. That's why we plan. That's why we plan and rehearse for emergencies. Not everything happens on the bang. At bang,
that's where everyone likes to start.
Such a rarity. Hey, there's one time you're going to walk outside and the guy next to you is going to get hit by a part of the Skylab. Do you get what I'm trying to say? You're going to go, damn. But even that, they have some warnings. Asteroid ahead, right? So I just don't want people to think that they're not in control of their destiny. In many aspects, your personal safety and security is your responsibility. And this is certainly one of those aspects.
Yeah, and that's why it comes into kind of looping back into where we said it was attitudinal. It was a mindset of tactical patience. Okay, is how do I slow down this? Do I need to react to this right now instantly, or can I give myself that gift of time and distance, right? And back off a little bit to go, hey, you know what? What other options do I have available? And that's why I said it's
Precisely.
useful anywhere. It's useful dealing with your kids. It's useful dealing with just someone at work. You're in a meeting with someone who's being difficult, or you're getting amped up, because once you start, like you said, once you start getting all these external and internal factors affecting your catecholamines, you're starting to get upset because things aren't going your way. This person is being non-compliant, whether that is an officer talking to someone on the street, or that's you literally pitching an idea to a client,
Yes.
and it's not going your way. What starts to happen? Well, now I start to get that arousal in my environment increases, right? So now I start going, hey man, I'm getting upset, I'm getting heated. This isn't
He
going
doesn't
well.
understand.
He doesn't understand.
I'm speaking the truth.
Yep.
He doesn't understand what I'm saying. You're right on.
And once you start to feel that, once you have that training, like we always talk about, it's that once I start, that starts to go up. I start to feel that I get hit, that cortisol hits my stomach. It's immediate. First thing I do is, we're going to take a few deep breaths right here. And I'm going to come up with a better course of action. Because right now I might want to put that guy's head through the wall, but that's probably not going to work out well for me.
Because what's my outcomes? What is my desired outcome? And can I get there from here?
That's the perfect point, is what is your desired outcome? And a desired outcome should be what's best, what's in it for you, what's best for you. So if you're that law enforcement officer pulling someone over, all right, this ends peacefully. We all go home. Maybe that person goes to jail, but I go home to see my family. Or you're in that boardroom is, hey, I get this deal. I get him on board with what I'm saying, him or her on board with what I'm saying, and they see it my way. And now I've got that paycheck to go put food on the table for my family.
And maybe I've gained an ally. Maybe I've created a stalwart ally rather than an opponent. Brian, you and I both jumped out of perfectly good airplanes before, and sometimes got paid to do it, not very much. And I will tell you this: if you sneeze while you're burning towards the drop zone, you've gone 50 to 70 feet in the nanoseconds it takes you to blink. So imagine that you're doing that in your car. Imagine that you complicate that by having a drink, or you complicate that by texting. Once we take our eye off the prize, once we no longer have our eye on the ball, what happens is we're no longer in control of our tactical patience, and therefore everything that happens is blind luck. It's a crapshoot. So the best laid plans have to include a component for tactical patience. And it's part of the 5 combat multipliers, and that's why we taught it that way. There are certain things that are going to make your lenses of human behavior pattern recognition analysis much cleaner, much clearer, and you're going to answer the questions and ask the right questions, okay? And one of those key components is tactical patience. You cannot get there from here without the gift of time and distance.
Right. And I think I forgot to mention that, of course, at the beginning of this episode, but this is one of many what you've called combat multipliers, right? 5 combat multipliers. This is one of them, but because they were originally, generally taught to military law enforcement, they were called combat multipliers, but they're not, it's not necessarily about combat, right? These are just,
Lao Tzu, Lao Tzu, the Art of War, Confucius, the Tao of Pooh, the Tay of Piglet, all good writings have had it. Anything Mattis wrote on a napkin, do you get what I'm trying to say? In a drunken tirade, those are things. You remember the Mattisism, and I'm going to butcher it, and he's going to punch me when he sees me. He's going to donkey punch me right in the chest and knock my ear out. Do you remember he came up with the be nice to everybody, but have a plan to kill everybody in the room.
Treat everyone with respect, but exactly.
Do you remember the lawyers jumping on that one? Whoa. So you remember his 5-3-5. That was where many of this was housed back in the Special Operations Training Group day. The lawyers got a hold of that, and it was be kind to every personnel when you did it. And it turned into a paragraph. You're not going to remember a paragraph, but you're going to remember TAC pay. And tactical patience means you got to slow time down until you're in control. If your enemy is playing pinball with you, and that means an adversary across from the boardroom, you're going to lose money, and you might lose the deal. So slow time down until you're comfortable with the operational tempo, then proceed. Simple.
No, and that's a good way. That's a good way to kind of put it right there, is just implementing it as a plan too, right? So if I am going into these events, whether that be, yes, a traffic stop, yes, a sales pitch, a meeting, you're talking to your kids and you want to find out what if they're telling the truth or not, where they're going tonight with their friends. All right, I got to implement, one of the things I can implement is some tactical patience. Is like, all right, well, at this point, I can do X, Y, or Z, right? I do that cost benefit analysis. If I go down this route, what's likely going to happen? What is likely going to happen if I choose to make this decision?
Yes.
Because maybe there's a better decision. And this can all happen rapidly. It doesn't take a long time to think it through. But if you're not thinking it through, you're never going to see the potential downside of it. And which
hence why training is so important.
Right.
Training for the real event gives you realistic conundrums that you have to overcome. And by overcoming those conundrums, those hardships in training, it prepares my brain to be more elastic, neuroplasticity, when I do involve a situation. And that includes MMA fighter in the ring,
yes.
or that includes a Cub Scout or Boy Scout trying to sell water bottles or magazine subscriptions at the Gunnison Car Show. So
yes.
it does not matter what you're about to face. It's prudent planning to make sure that you have tactical patience on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a kind of a good way to kind of wrap up that topic of tactical patience. But yeah, one of the things it is we keep hitting on that training is because so many different, and I'm not knocking anyone's system, until I go through it, but I don't knock anyone's system, but a lot of it starts with, all right, guy pulls a gun on you. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Like
where's the calendar that preceded that?
There's 100 things that happen to make that situation occur. Why don't we start back there before
again, back to the non-tenable situations, O'Brien?
Yeah,
what happens is people that make money on your fear, people that try to drive, listen, I don't carry a gun. If I need one, I'm taking yours.
Right.
And there's few people that you can say have the ability to pull something like that off. So when you're in a situation, just because you have body armor, just because you have the greatest whiz bang equipment, just because you're the one holding the Halligan tool, doesn't mean. May I give you a brief example of this? I was working with a guy that we'll call DC, and he's a lieutenant. He's retired now, and it was Halloween. And we were going down the street, and there was a call, unknown trouble. Unknown trouble is always a crap sandwich. It's going to go sideways, and it's terrible. So DC and I go towards the house, and immediately my erector PLA muscles are standing on end, and everything is, should I say or should I go? If I go, there will be trouble. We get up on the porch of the place, but we've got a call stacking up, and there's a man with the gun. RA just occurred, so we want to make short work of this because it's not worthy of our time.
Right.
And I remember
until it is.
Oh yeah, I remember when Danny went to knock on the door with his Streamlight SL20X. I looked at the house, and inside the house was this hue. It was like sunset, and it's pitch dark outside because we worked midnight shift. And all of a sudden, I noticed that the drapes in the house, it's happened only one other time when I was with William Atkinson. We were in California, and there was an earthquake. I'd never had an earthquake before. All of the curtains and all of the stuff all of a sudden started moving and getting smaller. And it was like I was watching some sort of animation take place. And right there, DC looks at me and goes, I got this, and boots the door. What we didn't know, it was the house was fully engulfed in flames, and the gases had overcome the family that tried to make the 911 call and hung up. The minute that the oxygen reached the fire, it reached flashpoint, and Danny and I woke up across the street.
Yeah.
So they didn't even know where we were. We had been blown so far that the fire department and other coppers were looking for us. And I remember I had no eyebrows. Do you get what I'm saying? I had about this amount of hair, though. I had a lot more hair back then. I looked like a gorilla. But the idea was that we moved too quickly. We were not in control of the op tempo, and giving ourselves fractions of seconds would have come up with a better plan. And guess what? Thank God the people got out all right. And thank God, other than hearing, we didn't, and some hair, we didn't lose much. But we failed to follow through with our own gift of time and distance, and it almost cost us our lives. And guess what? You can't do that the more often you do that,
Right.
the more often you're tempting fate and you might not walk away.
Right, and that's no different than the story I just told of us just sprinting across the road. Well,
Exactly.
let's just go do this. It's like, well,
Yep.
well, hang on here. That almost got catastrophically horrible for us.
Yes.
And you by God, Allah, Buddha, Vishnu,
Exactly.
whoever was looking down on us that day, we made it out. But that's the thing, and that's why I like giving relevant just any examples, and it's always, especially because we travel so much, it's always an airport or planning a flight. And yeah, guess what, it sucks getting down there for the 6 a.m. flight, the first flight out, but you know what, if something goes wrong, I got 3 more flights available. There's less traffic at that time, so I actually don't have to leave as early.
Greg is not as manic as he is at noon or at 5.
And that's the thing, is you try to make those, I could just do it here. You're not exercising tactical patience. So if one thing goes wrong, it sets in a chain of events where everything else is affected by that. But just, hey, I'm going to give myself 5 extra minutes here. Hey, I'm going to get down there a little bit early here. That's exercising tactical patience. That's
going mental Jenga. It's mental Jenga. You remember that game as a kid where you had that little character and you had to put him on a chair and put him on the ice, and you had the little mallet and you had to knock out each block of ice and try to keep the kid on there.
I have no idea what that was.
Family, okay? We didn't have a lot of games, you bastard. But the idea is that in any of those that stress patience, it does not mean that you're not moving quickly from position to cover to position to cover. It means that you're much more mentally efficient and cognitively in charge of time as a potential weapon against an adversary. And if you're not in charge of it, he will. Or
someone else is.
Will be. And guess what? Then you're dancing. Then you're playing pinball.
No, and I think that's a great point to kind of wrap on, and because that goes to any situation. I don't care if you're in the boardroom or on the battlefield. If you're not, you just said it right there, right? If you're not using that time effectively, if you're not accounting for that, someone else is. Someone is, and if it's not you, then you're losing that battle or situation or sales pitch. And
or a classroom, or on vacation, or your kid's first gap year abroad before school. It doesn't matter what the situation is, the parameters of the situation. What matters is the gift of time and distance, and training certainly will enhance that by changing behaviors.
Absolutely. All right. Well, unless you've got anything else to add, I think that's a good point to wrap on. We just wanted to hit up tactical patience. There's just another little tool for everyone's toolkit who's tuning in and watching. There's plenty more on the website, arcadiacognerati.com. Again, follow us on iTunes. You can download all these podcasts, listen to them on your drive into work, or to that as you're rushing to the airport, or sitting there waiting on your flight, hopefully, because you got there with plenty of time. You can listen to us on iTunes on the Left of Greg podcast. Go ahead and download them on your phone. And
podcasts are free, Brian. Lessons learned are free.
Yeah, check out all the blog section on the website too, is all lessons learned, and then on our Medium site as well. So I think that's we'll just kind of wrap it on that, but we've always got more information.
I believe your house is being burglarized.
It is.
Behind you, I just saw somebody walk by.
Yeah, so I'm not worried about it. I think so. I gotta go chase that person out. I'm gonna let him get
tactical patience, though.
I'm gonna let him get down the street before I bolt after him. Exactly. We'll do that. So, all right. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay tuned for our next one.